Welcome, everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and we're down here at the Nasir Harris Podcast Studio at the Boyer House on the campus of Central Penn College in Summerdale. We're being joined today by Dr. Jack Babinchak. He's an associate professor in our business department and also teaches our grad level courses in our MPS. Jack, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks for having me, Professor Miller. It's nice to be here.
You're certainly welcome. This is something that we had actually been talking about for quite some time. You and Bill Habasevich and Ben Lipschitz have produced an article that we are going to discuss today that is going to be published in the Transnational Journal of Business coming up here over the summer. So we wanted to talk with you a little bit more about what you've done, the study you did, and certainly sort of a preview of some of the results that you got. So what I do want to do a quick little introduction here. So we talked in our pre-show meeting a little bit more about this, so I can hopefully do it justice. To start, one of the biggest things that we've talked about as Nightly News, this has been one of the ongoing stories that we've covered, is the cost of textbooks at the college level. And we've talked individually in faculty meetings and things of that nature that we would, in some classes, assume that up to 50% of the class doesn't have the book. I know I always try. I've actually donated desk copies that I've had to the library so they do have access to it. But unfortunately, a problem nationwide, not just a problem at Central Penn College, nationwide, is the fact that students either can't afford their book or find no value in purchasing the book, even in classes where it's required. So can you talk a little bit more about, so that's sort of what this whole article has to do with. So can we talk just a little bit more about some of the issues you saw initially and some of the reasons why you started down the path of doing this particular study?
Your anecdotal observations are right on. Our study showed about 50% of students didn't have textbook. And this is where the conversation started. In our department meetings, we said, okay, let's look at some of the issues that we're having, and maybe try to whittle those down and see what the real problems are. So we kept coming back. Okay, students don't have textbooks, and then that conversation morphed almost into a yes, but even the students that do have textbooks don't seem to be engaging with the text to the level that we would hope that they would engage in the text. So the problem is twofold. Some students don't have the text. Those that do don't seem to be engaging with the materials the way they should. So that was kind of the impetus for the study.
Well, so one of the things that we initially as a college, I'd say about 2 years ago, and I'm speaking just for the communication department, so if business is a little different, please let me know. But one of the things that when we were evaluating changes in textbooks, was really at the top of our list was cost. In fact, I recall I developed the COM 101 class that we are currently using, Intro to Human Communication, and the book that I wanted to use, I was just looking at sheer content, was $225. And for a class that everybody has to take that is relatively reliant on the textbook, I would say the odds of you without the textbook in this class of mine, I'd be surprised if 1 in 4 that didn't have the textbook would pass. And because because it's an intro class, very survey heavy, very theory based. But one of the things was that there were other options. And so I when I saw the cost, which I was just blown away, I mean, I remember spending so much money on books in college, but I never spent $225 for a book. So I found another textbook that I liked about as much, and it was $75. So students out there, I want you to understand that when we are making these choices, cost is a factor. And a lot of students don't purchase the books because of the money. And that, again, that's not just a Central Penn problem. That's a problem nationwide. So one of the things we've also looked for is open educational resources. So basically either collections of articles that are available for free online or other open source documents. So did you ever try to implement anything like that throughout this process to try to address the cost issue?
Yeah, sure. We have open source documents in a lot of our classrooms. But again, I think the issue, what we were what kind of surfaced through our discussions was the engagement with the reading. So whether it was an academic peer-reviewed journal article, whether it was some open source textbook, or whether it was the actual textbook from one of the book publishers, it was, if you don't have the text, obviously you're not going to engage with the text or the articles. If you have the text and the articles, how do we start to ensure that students have the cognitive abilities and the cognitive skills to engage with the materials, understand what they're reading, and then be able to take that and apply it to problems associated with the course?
So you addressed the fact that 50% of our students were not either purchasing textbooks, or maybe even an additional percentage weren't engaging with the textbook. You would think, and I think honestly, one of the things that I've seen in the textbook industry is a failure to adapt to new technology. To me, simply scanning a book and putting it in a PDF is not my idea of them using technology appropriately. And not that I'm overly concerned, but the textbook industry is in dire straits right now. So what is your opinion on, and we'll talk about the McGraw-Hill that you guys are using, but what are your opinion on these textbook providers and how they're using technology at this point?
Yeah, and that's a good question, because we spend a lot of time with the representatives from McGraw-Hill in this case. There's other publishers out there, but we spent a lot of time with the representatives from McGraw-Hill talking about that very issue, and I think they're getting better. There's textbook technology supplements, the TTS they call them, and that encompasses a wide range of things. There's embedded quizzes, there's drag and drop type applications, there's the online textbooks that we have, the e-textbooks, if you will. So there's a whole area there. But then there's also these adaptive learning technologies, which is what we studied, because we thought that was the most interesting, because what it tries to do is tap into the metacognitive skills of the students. So it doesn't just present text and say, read this, and then go to class. It says, read this, and we are going to assess your level of understanding, your level of comprehension with what you're reading. And if you're not getting it, we're going to throw you back into the text a little deeper until we're confident you get them. And it's a complicated algorithm that does that, but it was something that piqued our attention, because, again, we were talking about engagement with the text. And again, I keep saying text and text and text, but this applies across pretty much anything that we're assigning to be read in a class. So if the students can develop those cognitive strategies to engage with the materials, with the text, that could be transferable to other readings that they might have. So that's when we said, okay, this is the direction we want to go as a department right now. And it's baby steps. It's not a cure-all, but we said let's see if we could adopt this. Let's study it to make sure it's doing what it says it's going to be doing, and then publish those results.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So you talk about, so you are in meetings and you understand that you want the students to engage in a different way with the text. McGraw-Hill has an opportunity that they can present this McGraw-Hill Connect. So what's the next step? You said about doing research. Can you walk us through some of the areas of research that you did with your classes?
Sure. Well, the first thing we did is the adaptive learning technology. We went out and we said, let's look at this, see what's being studied, see what has been studied, and surprisingly, there hasn't been a lot.
It's probably all relatively new technology within the last 5 years or so.
Correct, and that's the problem. So we read a few studies where, and again, I mentioned a lot of these tools that are in the class that publishers started using, and there was a few meta-analysis that were done that looked at all of these tools together. But you can guess what happens. There's a lot of variables involved. Was it this drag and drop thing I did? Was it the embedded quiz? Was it the e-text itself? Was it this metacognitive component over here? Was it this? So there's so many variables. You don't know if any one of those is contributing or if all of them in combination are contributing. So we read some of those articles and said, I think what we're going to have to do is isolate one of these technologies in order to really look at it and see the impact it has on student performance. And then we read two other articles, and believe it or not, we maybe saw a total of 5 articles total. It was amazing how little there was. And the 2 articles you read said no, they don't impact performance at all.
That's very surprising.
Well, which would make you think, okay, let's just stop here and go in a different direction. But the one thing I noticed in the articles that we read were, number one, they were studying upperclassmen. So the sample consisted of upperclassmen, junior and seniors. And I thought that was interesting because a lot of what you read say, okay, as you become as you matriculate through your program, you're going to develop your own cognitive strategies for reading. You're going to get better at reading as you go along. You'll be much better as a senior than you are as a freshman. So the study of upperclassmen to me didn't seem quite appropriate. The other study was health science students, and health science students are a bit of a unique bunch, almost like accounting students, where they have a little more rigorous high school experiences academically. And the admission standards tend to be a little higher too as they're coming into school. So we said, all right, that is not necessarily who our student population is in the business department. We see a lot of first generation college students in the School of Business, and that's significant. That's significant because there's a lot of studies out there. Now, if you want to go find studies, that's where you go find studies.
There's plenty of research out there about first-year college students, that's for sure.
Right, and they'll talk about things like maybe lacking some time management skills or low on self-efficacy or some anxiety in terms of test-taking and reading, and could be some attention problems. So to us, that really kind of said, okay, I think the studies that were done were missing the point a little bit about what these adaptive learning tools could be used for.
But we are definitely a unique school in that many of our students, and I don't know off the top of my head, and I'm not even sure if we do this research here, are first-generation college students.
About half.
Okay.
About half in the business department.
So about half in your department, I'd say it's probably at least that in all other departments across campus. So if we just say that half of the students here at the college are first-time college students, first-generation college students, that really has a profound impact on not only their own skills, what they're bringing to the table, but what maybe their expectations are from us as instructors. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I've really been working on is honing my online teaching skills, and it's something that now students are expecting more from us. So tell me a little bit more about what this, you'd mentioned an algorithm, and I'm sure that they are very tight and close to the vest on what that algorithm is because it's proprietary, of course. But can you talk in a general, can you give an example of a person Sure. in your Business 100 class and how they would interact with the McGraw-Hill Connect?
Sure. So the students are assigned a reading assignment, a chapter or whatever it might be. And as the students go through the readings, and again, it's all e-textbook, so it's all on a tablet or a notepad. They progress through the readings. There's a learning button, if you will, on the lower left-hand side of the screen that the student hits at certain points of the reading, and they will be asked questions about what they just read. And now the students will answer the questions, but it doesn't stop there. There's a follow-up question that the program asks. In essence, it's a 4-point Likert type scale that says, are you absolutely sure of your answer? Are you somewhat sure? Are you not quite sure? Or was that a complete guess and you have absolutely no idea? And if the student answers truthfully, it develops kind of a metacognitive profile of what the student does know and doesn't know. And if the computer program recognizes that the student really isn't grasping that concept or those concepts in that section, it will take them to another section, some more reading, some more definitions.
Reading
examples.
Within the text or reading external to the text?
Most of it's back within the text, but there could be some external to the text too.
Because that's what I would think would be very unique, because I understand they're maybe streamlining it a little bit, and then if they're having trouble with certain areas, they can go back in the text. But what I've seen in some of the research I've done about ebooks and how they really can be used differently is this interactive piece, whether it's video, whether it's podcasts, whether it's articles available online. That's where ebook providers really can take the next step in embracing technology, is all of the media that can be involved with an e-textbook that, frankly, hard copy textbooks just can't replicate.
Right. And you can go as far down the rabbit hole as you want with e-text. You can go to an article back in 1930 that Sigmund Freud wrote, and go to that. If you really want to go that deep into it. So yeah, it's really unlimited in terms of where you could direct a student. And looking forward, and this is completely off topic, but I would hope too that the students who are showing a mastery and command of the material can be taken somewhere that says, hey, look, we're going to push you a little bit more here. To show you something that we wouldn't normally show because it might be confusing or it might be a little too much at this point, but you're showing that you're kind of grasping this really well. So,
well, and what's really cool in my mind about this, and I'm very interested in this, and I'm I would love to speak with you more about this, about maybe doing this in some of our comm classes. What really intrigues me is we can work with them incrementally and scaffold learning in an online space and in an on-ground space. We can give them feedback to their papers. We can give them study guides for quizzes and tests. We can give them insight on assignments that they have from personal experience. What we cannot do currently, or maybe what we were not able to do up until now, is be there with them if they have questions during their reading. I mean, as an instructor, how many times has a student ever emailed you about a reading question?
Zero.
15
years.
I've literally never had one student email me a question about the reading, and I think that this is where this can step in, is now there is somebody to be there with the student if there are questions and to gauge how much they're taking away from it.
And a side benefit, too, is if the students are going home and reading it and really understanding and becoming intimate with the material, the next day when they come into class, then they're going to ask those questions maybe that we're hoping that they ask. I understood this and this, but what about this? And there's something that's maybe not associated with the readings, but is a very good probing question they might have.
Now, is there an evaluative component to this? Do the students kind of know where they stand, or can you kind of tell if they've done the reading?
You could tell it and got through it when it says, okay, you're done. And you got it. So some students, are not very long, and other students are a few hours to kind of get through it and completely comprehend it. But that's the whole point of it, right? One of the most frustrating things I think for a student is to read a chapter, reread the chapter, and then walk away and say, I don't think I understood. Not that I didn't understand it. It didn't grab my attention. I wasn't interested. I couldn't engage with the material the way that I would like to engage with the material. So this at least starts them on that process. And it's encouraging to know, or I hope they know, that over time they're going to find their own strategies. They're going to be able to place themselves in the text, their experiences. They're going to be able to draw on past learning to be able to really understand and be engaged with the materials that's in the text. But right now it's hard. So tell us a little bit about the study specifically. How did you conduct this study? Sure. Well, what we did is we ran two sections of our BOS 100. We thought BOS 100, which is our introductory business level course, would be the best course to do this on. And we ran two sections of the class. One was a treatment group, one was a control group. The treatment group got the McGraw-Hill Connect adaptive learning technology. The control group was just taught the way we always teach the class here on campus.
But with the textbook.
With the
same textbook.
With the textbook, yes. And we treated it the same way. We said, this is the textbook you need. We didn't make them go out and get it. The students in the treatment group got Connect because McGraw-Hill said, yeah, we're interested too, so we'll give it to the students in this class. And it'll take us another hour probably to talk about the methodology of what we were doing, because it's very important to try to keep the classes as consistent as possible, because we don't want the instructor unduly influencing the performance of the students. So, we carefully chose the two instructors who were Professor Habasevich and Professor Lipschutz, and they met daily, every day after class, and they discussed notes. They set their classes up the same way. The tests were the same. The lectures were as close as possible. The assignments, everything mirrored each other. And again, they met and took copious notes about, here's what's going on in my class, here's what we covered, and they ran their courses simultaneously throughout the term.
That's incredible. So what were some of the results? I don't mean to do the spoiler alert here, but what did you find? What were some of the results? Obviously, the results were good enough that you could put this together and be published.
I'll try to keep everybody awake as I roll through the statistics. Great. But so the first thing, we did a pre-test post-test in the classes. So each class took a pre-test post-test, and the first thing we did is we students were randomly assigned to classes, right? So we took away any of the statistical error that may be present, or we hope to. But what we did is we compared the pre-test scores of the two groups, and they were very similar. They were within a percentage point apiece, and the p-value was not significant. So the classes were very similar in their knowledge to introductory business concepts. And then when the class was over, we did a post-test, and we also looked at aggregate exam scores throughout the course of the term. So, and the other thing we did too, there's one more thing we did too. We looked at the difference between the pre-test and the post-test within both groups. So within the treatment group, we looked at it, and within the control group, just to put our mind at ease that learning was happening in both groups, right? So,
Right.
so the within group pre-test, post-test control group went from a 44% to a 65%. Pretty big increase, right?
Absolutely.
44% to 65%. We said, okay, that's good. That means something was going on in this class. In the treatment group, it went from a 46% to an 83%.
That's tremendous.
Pretty big increase, right? So then we looked at, was there a significant difference then between those post-test scores, the 65 versus the 83? And yes, it came out to be statistically significant in those pre-test, post-test scores. Then we looked at the aggregate exam scores and looked for significance there. And the aggregate exam scores for the control group was 78%. For the treatment group, it was 86%. Another significant increase.
Absolutely.
And what was even
It's
more,
almost a whole grade.
It's almost it is it really. And what was even more interesting in this kind of post hoc analysis we did, there was nobody dropped out of the control. Everybody stayed within the treatment group. I'm sorry, and 4 students dropped out of the control, and I believe there was 3 Fs in that class too. There's no Fs in the treatment group.
Talk to me. So we talked about this off air, and it was something that really I connected with. Now, as we're drawing some conclusions here, we see that there's major viability in some of the hypotheses that you had. But one of the main reasons that this was so important to you, one of the things you said to me, is because part of our job here is to make sure that learning is happening. Yes. But on the other hand, something you just said really stuck out to me. 4 people dropped and 3 people failed. So in one of the groups, 7 students did not make it through for one reason or another. Whereas the other group that was using Connect, all of them made it through. And to me, that's where that would be the selling point to me. We had 7 students in the one class that did not have Connect that either failed or dropped versus 0. That's the key.
And that's why we feel it's important to continue to study this because, as you know, we can't make assumptions based on one test that we do or one research project that we do. But they were interesting findings, and I would be curious. There's longitudinal studies here in the making. How many students persist? What's the retention of both of those groups? But like you said, what were the reasons some of these students dropped out? And I would propose that it could have something to do with what we talked about, self-efficacy. And if you're reading and you're not getting the readings, and it seems like everybody around you is getting the readings, your confidence levels are gonna drop a little bit. And if that happens, now you're going to disengage with the readings even more. Whereas you might not even attempt to open the book and do some of the assignments that are assigned. And it's just kind of it's a snowball effect, and it just keeps going. And I think the students reach a point of, okay, I'm really frustrated here, and I don't know if I can continue.
Now that this is done, do you have any final thoughts as far as future research that you're thinking about doing?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mentioned that some of the upperclassmen. I don't know if this technology is beneficial to upperclassmen or as beneficial as maybe to the underclassmen. So I'd like to look at upperclassmen and maybe even different programs and see if those results that we saw hold true for those populations. And then, of course, maybe looking at some other adaptive technologies. Like I said, there's a lot out there. So maybe we could isolate another one, look at it, and then through a series of studies, say, okay, here's how much this contributes, here's how much this contributes.
Now, my final question here: have you ever been published in the past in other journals?
No, this is the first publication.
What does this mean to you? Obviously, as academics, one of the things that we strive to do in our careers is to do some type of meaningful research, and even more paramount to that is to get published. What was the first thought that ran through your mind when you heard from the Transnational Journal of Business that your piece had been accepted?
I called my wife and told her she was at work. You're right, though, Paul. It's a big moment. It's significant. It means that something you've written has been peer reviewed and accepted, and there's worth, and you're contributing to the conversation, and contributing to the academic conversation, which is very important. So yeah, this is my first major publication. I throw aside the dissertation, and it's very exciting. Very exciting.
Well, Jack, I got to tell you, I really appreciate you coming down today to talk about this. Number one, I'm glad to have you on.
It's a beautiful studio. Thanks for having me.
It's too bad it's till episode 58 that we had. You have
I thought this was episode 1.
You have been, in my career, one of the most genuine people to me. Ever since my first day here on campus, you were always kind. I remember teaching a class or two for you at the last minute, and that was one of the biggest challenges I've ever had in my instruction. But those things really have helped me get to where I am today. So I just thank you very much for all of your support for me over the years, and I'm just so happy for you and Bill and Ben that you got this wonderful publication coming up here over the summertime. So we really thank you for taking the time.
Well, thank you. And can I also say that I sit back and I'm ecstatic about your career trajectory and what you've been able to do here over the past few years. It's encouraging. It makes you feel good.
Well, I appreciate that very much. All right. Well, Jack, thank you very much for joining the Nightly News Podcast today.
Thank you.
We'd certainly love to have you back down, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about this. Maybe after the fact, maybe if you start taking a look at doing some more research, we'd love to have you back down, or you're welcome anytime to talk about initiatives in the business department.
Great.
All right. Well, for Dr. Jack Babinchak, Associate Professor in the Business Department, also teaches in our MPS program, this is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll catch you next time on the Nightly News Podcast.
Hey, this is Sai Pinthong. Thank you for listening to the Nightly News Podcast.
Welcome to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller sitting in today. Today we're going to talk with two of the baseball players from the Central Penn Knights men's baseball team coming off of a very successful season on the diamond. So we will introduce them in just a second. We are also joined today by Nightly News President Brian Christiana. Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks again. It's becoming a regular.
Well, certainly when we're having you here because you were one of the main people that was instrumental into the live streaming of the baseball, and we will chat with you about that momentarily. We are joined by two newcomers to the podcast, Christian Fulp and Quinton Heckard, both communication students here at Central Penn College, have been gracious enough to take time out of their day to join us here on the Nightly News Podcast. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hi, how you doing? Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, first thing I want to start off with is we're going to talk nightly news related things here. This year, we had the opportunity to stream 4 of your home games, 3 of them in the net, and then on Tuesday, May the 8th, we went to Lawton Field in Harrisburg. What were your impressions of the live stream, and maybe more importantly, and I'll start with Christian, maybe more importantly, what did your family think of the opportunity that we had to stream these games, Christian?
I felt as though it was very nice to have because I have family that can't always make it to the games, and for them to be able to watch me on basically TV because you could hook it up, it's a very amazing experience, and they enjoyed it.
Well, we stream to YouTube. That's what Christian's alluding to, and a lot of your smart TVs, you can have different apps and things like that are go along with it. So I do know that a lot of the people actually were watching these games on their televisions, which I think is pretty cool. Quinton, what did you think, and what did it mean to you, and what did it maybe mean to your family that we were able to live stream some of these games?
I was grateful for the opportunity and that we had that. My mom watched all the live streams because she didn't get a chance to come to the game, but I never really got the chance to see myself play baseball. So watching it over again was pretty cool. It meant a lot to me, to be honest.
Well, one of the things that we hope long-term that it does is it allows you guys a little bit of an ability to scout yourselves or see, were you in the right position for a certain batter, or, maybe, I know, Christian, one of the games that we streamed, you pitched, and, being able to look back at some of your pitching performances might help you get better. So really, a part of the reason that we're doing this is because it is going to allow you guys down the road a chance to maybe look back in the off season, maybe see some of the things that you'd like to improve on, because that's what off season's for. Well, Brian, so I want to just educate everybody out there on what we did and what your part in all of this was. So between myself, Professor Davis, and you, we've also, in addition to doing the live streaming, commentated the games. A lot of schools out there are live streaming sports, but not all of them are providing commentary as well. It's one thing to just set up a camera and just let it go, but because of some of the unique problems that we had, the commentary was an absolute necessity. What were your impressions, Brian, basically of calling a game for the first time.
Oh yeah, this was it was really cool. I was just telling my roommate Dylan, who's writing. He's currently working a lot with reporting and all that, and he was working with baseball. I was telling him how this is a great first experience for me. I was doing some PA here and there, but actually doing a game live, it was really cool. It was great to work with this baseball team this season. It was a good group of guys.
Well, what's interesting to me is all of you gentlemen, I've spoken with you in the past, have wanted to do and get involved in sports. And while it's obviously tough to be involved with a broadcast when you're on the field, we are looking at doing some other sports, specifically basketball, also debating on doing soccer if we can find the people that are involved. So even just being a part of it, even just being behind the scenes, setting up the camera, setting up the shots, trying to get the best shot that we can, really is going to go a long way to your future in the field, because you're going to be able to put that on your resume. And the fact that we, as a group, mainly with Brian and Ian's help in the project when we researched the equipment and whatnot, but really just the execution too, is something I'm very proud of. I'm very proud to say that I commentated the very first live streamed event in our college's history, and it was just such a wonderful opportunity. Obviously, Quinton, you won Player of the Game that first game, so that was, I know, a moment that I hope that you remember in the future. So what were your impressions that first day when we came over to you and grabbed you? You just had a huge victory against Valley Forge. What were your thoughts when we came over and said, hey, Quinton, you're the player of the game?
Honestly, I just felt special, like you guys did a lot for us the whole season. And like since the first broadcast, you guys like improved immensely like over the next 3 that you did. And I was just honored really to get recognition for the stuff, I've been doing all year. So it was a great experience for me.
Well, and what's interesting to me here, Quinton, is we're writing an end-of-the-season wrap for the baseball team. And we talked today, we had a little creative meeting, and we were talking about, we wanted to name a Nightly News MVP or co-MVP. Let's just read your resume here. How does a .456 batting average with a .525 on-base percentage sound to you?
Sounds like I did my job this year at the leadoff spot.
And in addition, your pitching, you led the team in appearances, you led the team in games started, you led the team in victories, you led the team in strikeouts, and you had a very respectable ERA. So not only are you certainly one of the key offensive players, you're also a key in the pitching staff. So maybe a better question for me is, how do you prepare for your starts when you're also worried about, scouting the pitcher or learning as much as you can about the pitcher before you go in? How is it having to play the field? You're an excellent shortstop, but also pitch.
Like pitching is a game in its own, and it takes a lot of mental preparation. But my coaches this year, when I pitched, I always got DH for, so I never hit and pitched at the same time. But pitching is definitely something that I take pride in, and like it's the hardest thing to do on a baseball field, in my opinion, you have to control the whole game, and I just get myself mentally ready by being focused and doing what I have to do on the mound and on the field if I'm needed.
Well, Christian, let's take a look at your stats. As of May 4th, you were hitting .308. You had 7 RBI, 7 steals, only caught once. A .345 on base percentage. I mean, that's what we're looking for somebody in your position. 16 hits, 52 at bats, and you really showed up on offense. But you're also a pitcher. So you had 6 appearances. You started 2 games. You had 1 victory in a complete game. And, you also had a fairly respectable ERA as well. Same question. What is it like having to both, like how far, maybe a better question, like I know in major leagues they have a 5-man rotation. Did you guys kind of have the same 5-man rotation? Did you kind of have an idea when you were going to be pitching? Or was it kind of like you got to the field and it's like, hey, Christian, how you feeling today?
We did not have a specific 5-man rotation, but when it came down to it, our coaches always gave us a little bit of time to prepare. We had a group of guys that we knew that were our pitchers and that we needed to go when we needed to go. And he gave us a good time ahead of it in advance to really think about what we had to do, as our job as a pitcher is to control the game. He gave us enough time to focus on that and actually craft that.
Now, speaking from somebody, I played baseball my whole life, but I was never a pitcher. I was very, very impressed. The first game that we did the live stream of, you pitched. And I'll tell you what, you threw some of the most terrific curveballs I've ever seen. Now, how long have you been working on that pitch?
Thank you. I actually learned how to throw my curveball consistently maybe when I first started high school baseball, so ninth grade. So that's about when.
Well, I was always very intrigued because, it doesn't take a whole lot of brains upstairs to throw the number one, but when you start throwing your off-speed pitches and it's the mix and how you work them in, that's really how, even guys who throw 100 miles an hour in the big leagues, if that's all they got, they're going to get torched. They need to have a secondary pitch. Quinton, what is your secrets behind your pitching success?
When I'm pitching, I just like to see what the other team is bringing to the table first, and I'll work off that. I won't really use pitches if I don't need them. I try to be as efficient as possible, and most of my outs are like pop-ups and things like that. Like I only had 37 strikeouts in 37 innings. That's quite a bit, but I'd probably rather get one pitch and one out.
Let me ask you guys, and feel free, both of you as pitchers, feel free to answer this question. And then, Brian, I'm going to come back to you, and we're going to sort of talk a little bit more about the live streaming aspect. I noticed that your pitchers over the course of the season, and you did finish 16 and 13 of 29 games, 10 of them were complete games. When you go into a game as the starting pitcher, is there sort of an expectation from the coach that you're going to go the distance, being that a third of your games were complete games by your starters?
Well, I say when I'm on the mound, it's an expectation of myself to go the complete game. I'm not sure how many complete games I threw this year, but
you had 2.
Okay, yeah, that's not that much for me. I appeared probably like 7 or 8 times, and I want to go the whole game, but honestly, we have a core group of guys that can finish the game off for me if I can't.
I will say, in the May 8th game, I was very impressed by Aaron Gress, who came in the 8th and 9th and closed the door. Padilla got off to a shaky start, but only allowed 1 hit in innings 2 through 6. And then he did have some issues in the 7th, but got out of it, and Gress came in and closed the door. Just looking at the stats, Gress had only 1 save prior to that. Why wasn't he called? No, he actually hadn't had a save in the season. Why wasn't he called on more in the later innings? Because he had some pretty filthy stuff.
Yeah, when it comes down to that, we had Aaron as pretty much our ace. He was our go-to man when it came down to good teams or when we needed our best out there. Aaron gave us a lot of hard-fought innings and did very well this season. So at the end of the year, we needed him to finish it out for us, basically give us a strong one, and he did that.
Now, Brian, I want to move to you. Obviously, for all of us, typically what we want to do when things like this happen is reflect back on maybe what it means to us. And I know that, as we record this, the season literally just ended. But, Brian, what do you when you look back on this years from now, how do you think you're going to look at it? I mean, obviously you're going to look at it in a positive way, but what advantages do you see to being a part of this initiative, so much from the fact that you basically got this whole initiative off of the ground?
Well, this will be years in the future. I'll look back at this and be like, this helped me get where I want to be. It was like a stepping stone. It's as good for any student who is just looking to get into the field, and I think if you want to do it, just get involved. It's not that hard. It's really fun to do. And you're getting paid to do it.
That's the one thing that I looked at. For me, and Professor Davis also, it was tough for us to do more games than we did. Hopefully next year we won't have such horrible weather, and that's another thing we can talk about. But, I'm in at 7 o'clock every day, so I basically worked from 7 a.m. till 8 o'clock yesterday. But I have to say, when I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about my long day, I also realize that part of my job is to get to call a baseball game. And I am one of the biggest baseball fans you'll ever meet. My son is involved in Challenger Baseball, so I've shared with you I'm the coach of his team. I play fantasy baseball. I watch baseball every night when I can, and it's just something that I eat, sleep, and dream baseball. And the fact that I was allowed and afforded the opportunity by Central Penn College to take this initiative, and not only that, we did this all of us, right? We did this because it was something that was relatively easy to do. We had the people interested in doing it, and we had the facilities to do it. But on a bigger sense, we did it because we want to continue showing how hard you guys work, how good our program is, and in a way, we hope that it does help future recruiting and the marketability of our program, which without a doubt, I think it's done. So I'm going to look back on this as probably. This may sound sappy, guys, but one of the greatest days of my career when I got to go out there in the net and work with you guys. I've known you guys. I've had you in class. Some of the other guys I've had in class. But it's an honor to see. You guys. You got some horrible news that you didn't make the Small College World Series, and you very easily could have went out there yesterday and phoned it in because maybe to you the game didn't matter. It was really kind of an exhibition if you think about it. But you didn't do that. Can you tell me a little bit more about the resiliency of the team and the fact that you guys all did show up yesterday and played a terrific game?
That was the last game of the season, and that was the last game we got to play with 3 individuals on our squad that were seniors. So, we had to end it with a bang for them. And, yeah, we just we wanted to show, the league and everything, who we were and that we weren't gonna lose or go down easy.
Now, Christian, what did it mean to you to not make the Small College World Series?
It honestly hurt. Last year we made the Small College World Series and we were 500. This year we put it together pretty much a way better season, and it actually hurt very deeply because we had a better team this year, and I feel as though we could have went the distance.
Well, as I mentioned, you did finish 16-13, and in addition, you won 14 of your final 17 games. Can I just, because honestly, I didn't get to see any of the games because a lot of the early season games were on the road. Tell us about the schedule you had earlier in the season and how you managed to turn things around after, honestly, I'm looking at March 17th. At Penn State Mont Alto, you guys were in the middle of a 9-game losing streak. You basically went 1-9 to start the season. How did you turn it around? Because at that point, you must have felt a little demoralized by starting the season not quite the way you wanted to. What was it that turned you guys around and allowed you to win 14-17?
We certainly were. We did felt demoralized, and that kind of gave us fire to, turn it on. We knew that the beginning of our season was going to be the hardest part. Played a couple of Division II teams and D3 programs that's been around for a lot longer than we have. So, our coach told us that we got the hard part out of the way and that we could basically sweep the rest of the season and win every game after that. So that's what we tried to do, and we had a couple of good winning streaks after that.
That big win against Piedmont, that was your first game of the season.
Yeah.
And that might go down as the biggest win in our school's history so far. So, yeah, when did you guys, this is just another, like you said, a question. What did you guys get out of defeating a Division II team?
I believe what we got out of that was confidence. Beating a team like that instills a lot of confidence in every guy on our team, and it shows us that we could actually play as one and beat teams that that are the higher division up than us, and that shows that we have a chance to beat every single person in our division.
Hey, and then you got to beat Murray's team. You beat Murray's team too, so that was pretty.
Yeah,
that's really cool, gentlemen. I'd like to end the show with. I'm hoping that you share this with your folks. I'm assuming this is probably the first podcast that you've ever been on, and I'd like to just conclude with, I was just like you guys. I played from when I was 6 years old to when I was in my teen years. Obviously, I didn't really play much past teener ball, and I didn't ever get to play high school ball. But the people who were always there for me were my family, my mom, and my dad. Over the years, really were there and helped support me. And my mom hates sports; she can't stand sports, but she took the lead as being the scorekeeper for the team and was at every one of my games. Tell me just a little bit in our final thoughts here what it means to you to have your folks being involved in your baseball playing career and for them to be able to see you on TV. What do you think they think? I
would like to think that my mom is very proud of me and that she did a good job with me. For her to watch me on TV, it amazes me still. I really appreciate the things that you guys have done for me. And it also, not only my mom, it allows my daughter, that's only 6 months now, to later on in her life be able to watch her dad play college baseball. And it means so very much to me.
And that's the best thing about doing it on YouTube is that unless YouTube shuts down, which I can't imagine that's going to happen anytime soon, that stuff's going to be there forever. And, we want to, Christian, continue next year doing more and having more opportunities to get Central Penn Knights baseball out to the community. Quinton, same question. What do you think it means to your family to be able to not only see you, but what has their support meant over the years?
I mean, it means a lot to be able to share great things that I do on the field. Like, it means everything to me for my parents to see me do good, see me succeed. I know they're proud of me, and I do it for them, and I do it for my sister, my brother, my nieces. I'm just happy they can see online or wherever with commentary. It's just a great thing y'all did for us this year.
Well, it was our absolute honor. And if you notice in the story that I wrote recently, I literally did use the word honor because you guys really busted your butts. There were some, 16 cancellations, postponements because of the weather. I mean, it must have been tough for you guys, but you braved through it. You got through that early season skid, and, man, you turned it around. And really the USCAA should be ashamed of themselves that you guys aren't a part of the Small College World Series. However, according to everybody I've talked to, you guys are going to have even a more strong team next year. And, hopefully with some of the scheduling issues with weather, hopefully you can get some more games in and prove to the nation who the Central Penn Knights men's baseball team are. Brian, any closing thoughts as far as, maybe a thanks to the team or anything like that, something from your heart that you'd like to share with everyone?
Yeah, like I said earlier, these guys were really fun to work with. It was a good season. I tip my cap to them. They played really hard at every game we did. They really stepped up, and they really helped each other out, I feel like. If somebody was down, someone was always there to help out. And, there was a lot of bumps in the road, but they overcame it, and I really think that you guys are a class act, and you guys definitely deserve the playoff bid in my eyes.
Well, and to be honest with you, you spoke with Gabe Arellano as the Nightly News Player of the Game in the final game of the season, and one thing he said was that this was a team win, and it was from the starting pitching to the relief pitching to some fine plays made in the outfield and the infield to some clutch hits to some excellent eye on the ball as far as getting some key walks. It really was a team victory, so a great way to finish up. Gentlemen, I just want to close by saying, again, it's my honor to have this opportunity, and things are only going to get better. This year was sort of just our trial period to see what we could do and to see where the stadiums were and what kind of facilities we had. But to be honest with you, it's only going to improve from here. And again, gentlemen, I would love if you guys are involved with the Nightly News. I know that you had the baseball season going on, and I know that you guys will be back in the fall, and I look forward to you coming to these Nightly News meetings and being a part of it because we need you. You guys are excellent students in the classroom. You represent our college well, and I think that you could be very successful in the sports field, but you got to get your feet wet with the Nightly News. That's what they're looking for. So, all right, well, thank you, gentlemen, so much for taking the time down here today. You have nothing to hang your head, and in fact, you guys should be extremely proud with your season. So, Quinton Heckard and Christian Fulp, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And Nightly News President Brian Christiana, from me to you, I want to thank you for all of your hard work with the live streaming project. Brian and Vice President Ian Kimmerer got this project off the ground, and frankly, I really don't think it would have turned out nearly as successful. You are also our post-game interviewer, which we're going to continue doing, and you had the chance to get your feet wet calling a few games. So, Brian, thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Miller. The 3 words of 2018, trust the process, guys.
Yes,
Trust
sir.
the process. It's coming, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, well, for Nightly News President Brian Christiana and Central Penn Knights men's baseball players, Quinton Heckard and Christian Fulp, this is Professor Paul Miller, and we'll catch you next time on the Nightly News Podcast.